very nice. Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's show. Let's get started. My name is Sean. I am one of the advisors here at Stay. With me tonight is Matthias Wolf. He is our founder and also a licensed insurance broker. If you're a freelancer in Germany or thinking about it and you're confused about health insurance, you're in the right place. And honestly, you're not alone. We see this every single day. Tonight, we're going to be covering everything from GKV, PKV, travel insurance, the pension trick that most people miss, and the 5 mistakes we see freelancers make over and over. And plus, we'll have a live question and answers at the end. If you don't want to come on live and ask your question, please do put it in the chat box and we'll come to it at the end. So, Matthias, before we get into it, what's the single biggest mistake you see from freelancers making with their insurance?
The biggest single mistake that freelancers make is they tend not to long-term plan their insurance. So what's very understandable, you're starting off, you first make yourself self-employed, freelance, you haven't got that many clients yet. It is your income isn't that where you want it to get to. So you choose the most cost-effective tariff, which at that moment in time is the right thing to do. As soon as you start earning more money, you should look at your tariff again to make sure it is still cost effective when you get older. That's the one thing. The other thing, what a lot of people do, if you come from inside the EU and you become a freelancer and you insure yourself with the state insurance, with the GKV. And with the GKV in the first year, you have the option to say earning the minimum, which means your healthcare contribution is €201, which is exceptionally cheap. So you think you're happy and it works well for the first year. At the end of the first year, they'll ask for your tax returns. And then when you submit your tax returns and you've paid too little, there's a lot of people I know have had to pay, to be honest, including myself, I have to say that, have paid a big chunk then at the end of the first year. It's all about planning.
So let's start with EU freelancers. Matthias, the good news is that they can join the public insurance, right?
This is true. Freelancers from inside the EU have the choice whether they insure themselves privately or whether they insure themselves with the GKV. There are reasons to choose the GKV, which I'm going to explain to you a little bit later, I believe. But generally, it makes very little difference. If you're paying for your contributions yourself and you haven't got a large family to go with you, then choosing the PKV is the only sensible option, really, from a financial point of view, let alone from having better health coverage, but from a financial point of view alone.
Okay. Freelancers will pay the full 17.5% though, right? They don't have anybody else paying half.
Exactly. This is the system that we have in Germany, is that your social security contributions, of which your healthcare and your nursing care are the mandatory ones for freelancers. If you're employed, your employer will always pay half of that. If you're self-employed, he won't, so you're left paying that yourself. 17.5% is the average for healthcare alone. Then we have another 3.4% minimum, up to 4.2% for nursing care. So all of a sudden, of your income, you're paying over 20% away, which is probably more than what you're paying rent, depending on what your income is. So yes, that is actually really true. We don't make it easy for freelancers here in Germany, or people starting companies and stuff like that. I can again say from my own experience, the first couple of years are really difficult because we are an administrative nightmare.
I had a client recently who was completely shocked by her first GKV bill. She was paying nearly €900 a month. Can you break down for everybody why it's so much higher than what employees pay?
Well, as I've just said, if it was an employee, €450 she would have paid, and €450 her company would have paid. In her case, she pays it all by herself. So if she has a decent salary, she's earning €50,000, then alone for her healthcare, she's paying €880, including a nursing care, well over €1,000, which is a shock for most people. And a lot of people are employed, become freelancers, and don't realize what they're letting themselves in for like that. So,
But there's one big advantage for families though, right? The Familienversicherung. My German's awful. That's
Familienversicherung. Okay. This is the one argument for the state insurance, which is always, always valid. The state insurance is a family insurance. You have two partners where one goes to work, one stays at home and looks after the three kids, for example. The one going to work pays his full state premium, which might be a lot. So he's paying his €1,000 or what is it paying to state. But everybody in his family, his partner, kids, they're all insured under that one premium. In the private insurance, it's one of the reasons that if you're single, private insurance is so much more cost effective. In the private insurance, everybody has to pay for themselves. So you go to work, you have to insure yourself. So you're paying premium X, €400. Your partner who's at home, paying €400. And each of the kids are paying €150. And then it can soon become expensive. So that's one thing it should be careful of. If you have, here's a little bit of specialist knowledge. If you have a couple, okay, and they're both freelance, it would always make sense. And at some point, they're planning to have kids. It would always make sense that one of them insures themselves privately and one of them stays in the GKV. In fact, it should always be the higher earner who stays in the GKV because the kids automatically go to the higher earner. Does that
Okay,
make sense?
yeah, it
Yeah.
does make sense. Yeah, hopefully for everybody else, it did for me. So basically, in short, GKV works for families, but for single freelancers earning good money, it gets expensive quite quickly.
But there's another reason when a GKV is good when it's possible. If I have ongoing health issues, it could be that the private insurance doesn't insure me or insures me with a hefty surcharge. So, for example, if I have a pre-condition, diabetes or I don't know, arthritis or whatever I might have, that's another reason when you should be looking at GKV.
Okay, perfect. So now the situation that's a little bit different, non-EU freelancers. Is it true they basically have to go private?
And there's a special bit of knowledge about that as well. Yeah, when I first come from outside the EU, the GKV they haven't got, it's not mandatory for them to insure me. Uh, and they'll normally, in 99% of the cases, say no. So yes, then I have to insure myself privately if I come from outside the EU, if I'm a freelancer. If I'm employed, that doesn't count. If I'm employed, they have to insure me. Doesn't matter where I come from. But if I'm a freelancer, then they're not forced to. But the group of people who that really hit in the last little past few years of the British, they suddenly realised that maybe it wasn't the best idea what they did. I've always wanted to say that in public, to be honest. I've always wanted to say that. Maybe it wasn't a great idea what they did.
Those who-
And they're struggling a little bit under that at the moment. So yes, it's very difficult.
Okay. So what does it actually cost? Because I think a lot of people assume that it's like private insurance is super expensive.
No, it doesn't have to be because a private insurance is calculated on in a different way that the state insurance is calculated. So a private insurance is calculated on the age that when you apply. So if you apply at 30, that's your entry age. That's what they calculate it on. It's calculated on your level of health and it's calculated on the level of cover that you want. So you have a lot of choices. Do you want a one bed in hospital? Do you want 60, 70, 80, 90, 100% dental treatment? And. Depending on that, the premiums vary quite a lot. So they start, I would say, for a 30-year-old around €300 and go up to maybe €500-600, depending on how comprehensive the cover is that you want. The state insurance is calculated on your income. So especially the freelancer just starting out, your income normally rises quite sharply. And you will notice that in your state insurance premium. You don't have that with the PKV. It's a lot more plannable.
Okay, so this one is a big one. A lot of my clients come in worried that PKV premiums will explode when they're older. What do you actually tell them?
Right. This is a real, the major economic problem we have in Germany is we can't get our social security costs under control. So I've lived in several different countries. I grew up in the UK, which isn't a third world country. But I have realized, and I do know how good our healthcare system is, for example, whether it's state or private, to be fair. However, it all costs a lot of money, and we are struggling to get that. It's making Germany an unattractive place for companies to come because the costs of employing people is so high. So basically, what we can say, if we look historically, the private health insurance goes up by 2 to 3% a year. partly to do with medical advance, partly to do with inflation, which is an obvious one. The last 10 years, I have to be honest about that, it's gone up by about 3 to 4%, mainly due to COVID, to be honest, and the hyperinflation that we had a couple of years ago. That's why it's gone up more than usual. But if I look at the GKV, that goes up by the same amount as well. It's not as though I insure myself GKV and it doesn't go up. If I look at the supplementary premium that I'm paying in the GKV at the moment, which is 2.9% of my income on average, a couple of years ago, that was 1.7%. Literally a couple of years ago. So it's gone up by 1.2% in 2 years, which is a lot of money. That's the one thing. The other reason why the GKV is guaranteed to increase is we have a threshold out of which we make our contributions. And this year, the threshold for nursing care and for healthcare is €69,750. Last year, it was 66,000, and I'd have to lie, 600 or 400. Can't quite remember. Doesn't matter. But the theory is because this threshold goes up year for year for year, if I'm earning over that threshold, my premium's going up year for year for year. If I'm under it, doesn't affect me. If I'm over it, then I will notice that year for year.
Okay, so it's not that PKV gets unaffordable, it's just that you need to enter with the right plan.
You need to enter with the right plan, and you need to plan what you're doing. We have something called Altersrückstellung. There's a word for you, Sharon.
Not.
Stellung. Which basically part of our premium, every premium we pay into the state insurance, gets saved for later in life. You have to think about the way they calculate the premiums. They take your entry age, your level of health, and they work out the cover that you want, and they work out your average cost for the rest of your life. Okay, so if you're 30 years old, you're going to be 90 statistically, and what are your costs, more or less? No, you're not. A woman in Bavaria is going to become 87.4, and a man in Bavaria is going to become 83.2. I don't know more than that, but they're the statistics we have at the moment. So they work out your average cost, and basically that's your premium. Obviously, they put on a little bit of admin fee and stuff like that, but basically that's your premium. So it basically means you're young and healthy now, and you're paying more than what you actually cost. Later in life, then, there's a rule which older people cost 7 times more than younger people. Later in life, you're using what you saved in your younger years to subsidize your older years, and that's the way the PKV can guarantee a stable premium. So depending on I hate to use the word cheaper, but I have to use the word cheaper. The cheaper your tariff is when you're entering, the less you're saving for later in life, and the more unstable it will become. That's why I'm saying, yes, do at the beginning, choose a very cost-effective tariff because you're going to need to. But when you can afford it, you need to adjust your tariff as well to make sure that you're protected for later. That's the one thing. And then for about the last 10 years or so, on every PKV premium you have, this is something the government has stipulated, you pay an extra 10%, an extra savings part of 10% of the premium. And you pay that until you're 60. At 60, it stops, so you have an automatic premium reduction when you're 60. And what you save there as well means basically in retirement, your premium shouldn't go up anymore. Whether that 100% works, nobody can tell you yet because we haven't got that far down the line, but that's the theory behind it. So yeah, one last point to that. Can I say one last point? What makes a lot of sense?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. So if you choose a more comprehensive tariff now, let's call it that way, and you're making your savings for later in life on that comprehensive level of cover, when you then get to retirement and you say, okay, I don't need a 1-bed in hospital, I'm happy with a 2, or instead of having a €300 deductible fee per year, so the part I pay myself, I'm quite happy paying 600 myself. The part that you've saved is too high for the level of cover that you have. So when they redo the calculation, when you change your tariff, your premium drops disproportionately. I can honestly say I've been privately insured for quite a few years now, and I'm very pleased I've done it. But it is all about planning.
It's okay. So this is one that I see all the time. When people arrive in Germany with travel insurance and think they're covered. Let's talk about why that is a problem.
Okay. It's a very simple thing to do. It's not just travel insurance. We also have like international insurances like Cigna or Allianz Worldwide Care, and the problem's the same there as well. Normally, if you have a Movista or you have a Advigon or whatever everybody has as their travel insurance, that will do to get your first visa. However, However, your first visa normally lasts a year, and you're happy with the track. Again, you're young, you're hardly using it, so it's not really affecting you at all. You have your insurance, you know if something serious happens to you, it'll get paid for, and they work. I have to say this thing about travel insurance, and they do actually work. You break yourself, they repair you. Simple as that. However, they're not considered as compliant here in Germany. You have your travel insurance for a year, you go back to the Ausländerbehörde, you say you'd like to renew it, and they say, no, you haven't got a German health insurance. So off you go and you try and find yourself a German health insurance. That starts to become difficult because for last year you've been in Germany, you haven't had a compliant health insurance, but it's mandatory. So wherever you apply for that health insurance, the government says they have to charge you penalties. And the penalty for the first 6 months of not having one is for each month, 1 month's premium of where you insure yourself in again. And after that, it's 1 month's premium for every 6 months. So if you're there for a year, that's 7 months premium you're paying as a penalty fee. When you work out that I don't know, a health insurance costs you €350 or whatever you're paying, that's a lot of money you have to pay at that point. And as I say, the longer you're here, the harder they are to apply for as well, whether it's state is normally a bit more expensive than private. There are ways around it, and there are some companies that turn a blind eye to that, but it's something you need to know. So no, staying on a travel insurance or a worldwide cover is not the thing to do. You're asking for trouble.
Okay. So please bear with me, everybody, because I don't speak German and I hate saying German words, and Matthias laughs at me all the time. But my next question involves a long German word. But I think you've just said it. What does the Ausländerbehörde
Not
actually
bad.
That was so bad. What does it check, and what counts as like real insurance?
Okay. So basically, a German compliant health insurance, there are two components to this. First of all, it's mandatory to have nursing care, and you can only get a nursing care cover. You can only really get that if you've got a German insurance. But a German health insurance is not allowed to have any limitations. So if I have an Allianz Worldwide Care, it will cover me for $2 million over my lifetime or something, which is plenty, which is probably fine, but it's still limited. Any other forms of limitations, time limitations, cover limitations, money limitations, treatment limitations, German health insurance has got to cover everything that's medically necessary, so there's not allowed to be any exclusions. For it to be considered compliant. So yeah, and again, it's annoying because if I look at Allianz Worldwide Care, you can get great worldwide cover for €250, and it works. It works really well. But it doesn't really help you because you're not going to get your visa, basically.
Okay. So I think I know the answer to this question, and probably everybody else does. But what should someone do right now if they currently have travel insurance?
Go on then, what's the answer, Sean?
Contact us. That's why I've got you here, Matthias.
Basically, the sooner we look at that, there are other forms. You can have incoming insurances which are compliant for the first 5 years, which are a lot more cost effective than full German plans and that. But it's something you have to do because it becomes harder and harder the longer you do. You need, and again, it's as I say, if you've been here on a travel insurance, or there are ways around paying penalties and stuff, but that's sort of a specialized knowledge where people should come and talk to us. We've helped a lot of people in that situation,
Absolutely.
including my father. Yeah,
End of the
he's
story.
another one of these wicked people.
Okay, so let's do the head-to-head PKV versus GKV. Which one actually makes sense?
Again, it depends very much on your situation. So if you have a family or you're planning to have a large family where partners at home, if you can get in the GKV, it's the only sensible thing to do. If you have serious health issues, getting in the GKV is the only thing to do. By serious health issues, I mean if a private insurance can choose if they want to insure you or not. The GKV have to insure you. If you're having a health issue where the private insurance say, sorry, we can't insure you, then if it's possible to go to GKV, that's a sensible thing to do. If that's not possible, we have something called a Basistarif in Germany, which, again, for non-EU freelancers, a Basistarif where every private insurance has to insure you. It costs around €850 and the cover's slightly worse than the GKV, so that's not the best place to be. Single, you're in a partnership where you're both working, or in a marriage where you're both working, if you're healthy, if your income is 30,000 plus each, and rising, hopefully. If you're under 50, and really another point is if you're not planning to retire in Germany, then it's a bit of a no-brainer really to insure yourself privately. As it has to be said, there's absolutely no reason against it at all. Quicker waiting times, much quicker waiting times at doctors, much more comprehensive dental cover, much more comprehensive psychotherapy, much more comprehensive. There is absolutely no reason not to. And yes, we hear that the private insurance is unaffordable in retirement. When we got onto the next point, I'll explain what's sensible there anyway. But if it's planned right, you're going to be paying less premiums for all of your life and have better cover even if you retire in Germany. But it is very difficult to do if you just go on Check24 and choose the cheapest tariffs and stuff like that. You do need a bit of guidance. There's a reason why we do things. Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about the numbers. Let's say we have a freelancer earning 50K a year. What are they paying into each system?
Okay, so if we take 50K a year, and if we take just the 17.5% for the healthcare, you're looking at €880 a month of your 50,000. 50,000 before taxes, what's that? That's 4,000 a month, more or less. And of that 4,000 a month, 1,000's gone already, which is a big hit. And as okay, when you said your friend, she was shocked how much she's paying. There's a lot of people when they get their first PKV, they really are shocked how much they're paying.
I've had it so many times said to me like they just were unaware.
So for example, a 30-year-old, if he insures himself privately or she insures herself privately and insures themselves well, so like with a proper tariff, you're talking about €450, which is half the premium.
So I feel like you have answered this, but what about families? Does having children change the recommendation?
No,
Okay.
no. Children aren't very expensive too. Right, children, we said part of the premium we save for later in life, somewhere up to 50% of the premium you pay. Children don't pay that. Okay, so children are actually quite cost effective to insure. Good children's insurance costs €150 a month for much better cover, which is a private doctors, private rooms, whatever. Children break themselves a lot. They fall out of trees. They do whatever. People like to have their children well insured because one of the things about life is we all sort of care for our children. So no, having children isn't actually the problem. Having a non-working partner at home who's paying €450 or €500, that's the problem. It's not the children themselves. It's actually the old-fashioned family model. One goes to work, one stays at home, looks after the kid. That's the problem, but it's not the kids. It's actually the partner where the problem is. Does that make sense? So if you have two working partners and kids, then the PKV is still a really cost-effective choice for you.
Okay. So who should definitely be looking at PKV? So what's a profile? What would you say fit into the profile of someone having PKV?
Under 50, healthy. I've said this. Under 50, healthy, meaning 30K plus, should at least have it calculated for them. They're not. You see, if you're not planning to retire, if you're here in Germany for 5 years, right? This is something I have with my clients all the time. Come to me, freelancers, 30 years old. What should I choose? So he said, you have to worry about later in life, this, that, and whatever. Don't always choose the cheapest. And they say, well, I'm not actually going to be here for longer than 5 years, so it doesn't really concern me. Then that's right. Then you can choose a more cost-effective tariff, or the most cost-effective tariff, which doesn't save for later in life, or only minimally saves for later, because it doesn't interest you whether premiums are stable when you retire, because you're going to be long gone, so to say. That's an argument that makes a lot of sense to then choose a tariff like that. The only thing is, after 5 years, I don't know, you've fallen in love, you've got your first kid in Kita, you've got whatever, this, that, and whatever, and you're not going, then you really need to look at it again. And that's when I say that's the biggest mistake that people don't make, because then they're left in an unstable tariff.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dive into pensions and healthcare combo. This section, nobody expects in an insurance webinar, but it might just be an important one. Why does pension matter for freelancers? Or freelancers visa, sorry. I should have finished my sentence.
Okay, if you're, it's actually not the visa. The question's wrong. So a visa is it's not a full residence permit. So with a visa, pension doesn't really apply at all. But as soon as you want to apply for your permanent residency permit, basically you're only going to be granted that if they're convinced they're not going to have to pay for you in old age. So you have to not 100% show a pension. They say you have to have contributed 60 months to a pension to be able to, and. And they're the 60 months realistically that you're in Germany, the 5 years before you can apply for the permanent. It's not just that. You have to basically prove an income. So if you have property abroad where you're collecting a rental income and you can prove that, that all counts towards it, and so on. Yeah, when we're going for a residency permit, it is a topic, which brings me on to the next topic, if I may, on that thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. We've already covered the fact that freelancers mandatorily have to pay into the state health insurance and they have to pay into the state nursing care insurance. They do not have to pay into the state pension system, and they don't have to pay into the unemployment system either. Unless there's a couple of exceptions, teachers, coaches, since COVID, are all forced to pay into the state pension system, but your normal graphic designer, this, that, whatever, he doesn't have to. They're actually thinking about changing that. We've been talking for years and years and years that even for freelancers, it's going to be mandatory that they have to save into some kind of pension system, because we do have a lot of people just getting by and then they get to retirement age and they have nothing. So that actually makes sense that they're doing that, but at the moment, that's not the case. We should all be doing something, okay? If I'm back to my 30-year-old earning 50,000 euros, in either 900 euros to the state or 450 euros to the private healthcare system, I can take that 450 euros or part of it. It's actually enough just to take part of it and save it for my pension, okay, without actually paying more, which means I'm covering a couple of bases with that. I'm covering the pension that I'm going to have to show to get my permanent residency. So if we look at it, if I'm 30 years old and I'm saving 300 euros a month into a tax benefited system like a Basisrente, when I retire, and I'm using my tax return to maximize my investment, when I retire at 65, I'm going to have roughly 1,700 euros in retirement. Okay, that's the one thing. At the moment, it's something like 1,600 euros or 1,600 something we need for the Ausländerbehörde as a pension we need to prove. So I'm very close to doing that without actually paying more, just by insuring myself privately in both systems. That's the one thing. The other thing is, and this is why a private insurance makes so much sense for our clients and why I'm forever ever saying this really. If I'm paying into the state insurance, I'm paying a lot of money. And I'm not sure I'm going to retire in Germany or not. And if I do then retire in Germany, that's fine. I've paid into the state insurance. If I leave Germany, everything I've paid in, I've lost. Because when I leave Germany, I cancel my insurance and I don't take any of that with me. If I save into private insurance, when I leave, my private health insurance goes as well because I cancel it. However, if I've used part of my savings and put it into a private savings plan, if I stay in Germany, I use that private savings plan to subsidize my health insurance, which means I've paid less and had better cover all my life. But if I leave, and this is what most of our clients are going to do in the end, even though it's not such a bad place to live, Germany, but most of people will end up at some point returning home. I don't know, parents getting old, this, that. There are a million reasons why I end up doing it. I can take that with me and I haven't lost it. So it makes so much sense. Yeah. And that way I really do cover all my bases. I know I'm not paying too much for my health insurance. I know I've got my visa, my permanent residency sorted. And I know I'm not losing everything should I decide to leave Germany again.
So it's definitely your recommendation to sort health insurance and pension sort of in the same conversation. It'd be advantageous to
Nope.
not in the same
Nope.
conversation, but into the same sort of like.
I was going to say the way we split our company, we believe that you can't be an expert on everything. It's got so detailed, all the different topics. I can't be a financial expert advising what funds you should choose for your pension plan and also telling you what plan you should choose for your kids' dental plan. They're worlds apart. So we've split it up into different apartments. We have health insurance department, a financial advice department, and material insurance. Material insurance is a cars, houses, things like that. And yes, you should look at planning the two together, but no, you shouldn't speak to the same person. You should always speak to an expert.
Perfect. So let's jump into the 5 common mistakes people make. The first mistake we see is choosing the absolute cheapest PKV tariff. It looks amazing at first, 2 to 250 euros per month, but those tariffs have high deductibles. So basic dental and the premiums rise faster because they build fewer reserves. A mid-range tariff actually costs less over 20 years.
True, true. This is true. There's one thing that I always talk to my clients about, and I would like to disagree there. So if I'm an employed person, I go back to being employed, and I've got an employer paying half of my premiums, then it doesn't make sense to have a deductible fee because my employer will always pay half of my premium, but he won't pay half of my deductible. Having a deductible fee, which means, I don't know, classically the first 500 euros or the first 1,000 euros I pay myself in a year, and after that, the insurance company covers it all, actually does make a lot of sense. It's a pure mathematical question. So having a deductible lowers your premium significantly. And if I'm a freelancer, especially at the beginning, I'm interested in low fixed cost. Okay. If I then do use all of my deductible, or I don't know, I break a leg and I definitely go over my 1,000 euros and I pay those 1,000 euros, it still works out slightly cheaper than having one with no deductible. So if I'm paying for all myself anyway, right? I'm paying for my deductible myself, I'm paying for my premium myself. I might as well have a lower premium to begin with, lower fixed costs, and then pay for my deductible rather than having the high cost to begin with where I know that I'm going to pay more, if you know what I mean. So yes, generally it's true. And having a comprehensive tariff for reasons we already spoke about in the long run is true, but the deductible, it's a pure mathematical question. And for a freelancer, it's not a bad thing to have. It's, do I feel comfortable with the risk? That's a question everybody has to answer themselves. Am I sensible enough to have 1,000 euros set in my bank account so that if I do have to pay for it, I can? But there's a lot of argument for having a deductible as a freelancer, and it does reduce your fixed costs. Mm. It's I don't know, that's the first mistake, and I say a lot of people, they're saying the GKV when they're earning over 50,000 euros. If we look at any freelance graphic designers, software designers, this, that, and whatever, most of them are earning over 50,000 euros and stably because it's something that we need. To stay in the GKV then just makes no sense whatsoever. So that would be mistake number 2, I would say, which I would like to name if possible.
Okay. So mistake number 3, not declaring your correct income. The GKV bills on your last tax assessment. If your income jumps, you get a retroactive bill. I've seen 3,000 to 5,000 euros due immediately. The fix is simple: report changes proactively and set aside 20% of the revenue. Correct?
Yep. We've had that before. That is, as I said, that sort of got me a little bit as well. It's a mistake that so many people make. They earn more. They don't think about letting the state insurance know that they're earning more. They do their tax return. They hand their tax return in, and they should have been paying 900 euros, and they've only been paying 350 for the year. And then you have to back pay all of that. Thing about the state insurance is they're very quick at making you back pay. They're not so fast if you've overpaid. Have to be fair and honest about it. It's the same a little bit with the tax authorities, but nobody's quite as bad as the state pension system. They're not quick at returning. Yes, uh, you should let them know as quickly as possible when you see that your income for the year is going to be much higher than what you actually declared. Theoretically, if you're self-employed, you should be putting probably not 20% even, but because of tax and stuff like that, you should be looking at just putting a holding account of 35% back from your income. And that's the dangerous bit because we all know you've had not such a good month and you've got your rent to pay. Now, I'll just take it from there for a minute, but I'll put it back next month, 100%. And you don't. We all know what life's like and you don't. So that's the dangerous part.
Okay, so the last mistake we've got here is relying on travel insurance for visa compliance, as we already discussed. But I can't stress this enough. As Matthias said, it's not compliant. Travel insurance is not health insurance. So yeah, you need to sort that now if anybody does really have
Yeah.
the travel insurance option.
I think our health should be very important to us, and the travel insurance is basically emergency insurance. So if I break a leg, if I have a heart attack, if something acute happens to me, yeah, I'm covered. However, all those things like we should do, like have a checkup, make sure our blood pressure's all right, make sure, I don't know, have a dental clean, that's not covered by travel insurance as well. So it's not just that we're putting ourselves at financial risk, we're putting our health at risk as well, and that's really not worth it.
So, does anybody have any questions? I haven't seen anything written into the chat just yet. I was expecting more, but maybe you've explained it that well that nobody has any questions, but I can't see any right now. Does anybody have any questions? Here we go. So, I've been trying several times for a freelancer job I have been looking. Is there anything I might probably be doing wrong?
Right, whoever wrote that, could they please quickly turn on their microphone and explain what they meant?
Clarify, yeah.
Clarify, because it's slightly confusing. Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Sorry. Thank you for the lectures.
Mhm.
I'm in Germany. I actually had my PhD in electrical engineering,
Okay.
and I had my PhD in electrical engineering. And I've been trying to get a job, like work in Germany. Actually, it's basically without German language, it's difficult. And I've been trying to get a freelancer job here, probably to actually make my living easy. But
Mhm.
I've tried. Mostly, I get an email to send my CV for freelance jobs. But I send it, I don't get called. I don't know why. And I've been trying my result. My CV is good, distinction, my PhD, distinction, my master's. And I've been a lecturer for quite a while. But usually, I don't get called. I don't know the reason why. So I said, maybe you could help me with some hint on how to get it done.
There could be, maybe I've misunderstood this wrong, but you're applying for several jobs now, okay?
Yeah,
Is that correct? After your
yeah,
PhD?
yeah. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
If you're applying for jobs, you're not gonna end up being a freelancer, because a freelancer is somebody who basically works for themselves and works for people giving them, I don't know, work basically, but on their own thing. As soon as you're applying for a job, you're not a freelancer in Germany. Okay, so I know it's difficult. I'll tell you a story. My son's just finished his master's, and he's got a very good master's degree, and he's been applying for work for the last 6 months. It's actually not easy to get your first job, but as I keep telling him, chin up. There is the right job for you there. And yeah, it's just perseverance. Sooner or later, I mean, electrical engineering is something we need, to be honest, obviously. So I wouldn't worry about it. You just need a bit of, let's call it resilience.
Okay, we do
Okay.
have another one. Can you read that again?
Do both GKV and PKV ask for freelancers' income periodically? How often do they review income? Right, so the PKV is absolutely not interested in your income. It calculates your premium solely on the age you are when you apply, your health, and your level of cover. Doesn't interest them whether you earn 10,000 euros or 100,000 euros. The state insurance will ask, and I will say they will ask for your tax return each year. So now you're probably 25 doing your tax returns. Now, up until about June, you're doing your tax returns. They will ask to see that tax return, and they will ask to see that every year. So the GKV definitely yearly ask for proof of your income, whereas the private insurance, they're not interested at all.
Okay. I do have one here. Can I switch from GKV to PKV?
Yes, hang on a minute. Can we come back to that one, Sean? And can you? Okay.
Ray, I think Ray's got to put the other one back up.
Okay. For a single person, is there generally an income threshold when it makes sense for freelancers to switch from GKV to PKV? Or you think it always makes sense? No. It really depends on the premium that you're going to be paying in the PKV. So let's say you earn 30,000 euros. That's 2,500 a month. You're paying for, if you're GKV insured, you're paying 500 euros into the 500 euros plus into the GKV. You're 30-year-old, you're paying 500 euros plus into the GKV. If you insure yourself privately, you're 30 years old, you're paying 300, 350 euros. So there it makes sense. If you're earning 30,000 euros and you are 40 years old and you're paying 500 euros again into the GKV because it's just income, and you're paying 450, 500 euros for the state insurance because you're applying 10 years later. The earlier you apply or the younger you are, the cheaper your insurance will be in this, the PKV for the rest of your life. Then you have to think about whether it makes sense. So there should be, unless you're worried about your health and the level of the level of the cover that you have, when really privately is a lot better, there should be a little bit of daylight. So if you're 40, if you're 30, you should be earning 30,000 before you think you're making the switch. If you're 40, you should be earning 40,000. If you're 50, you should be earning 50,000 as a rule of thumb, to look at it seriously. I hope that answers the question. So yes, it does make a difference. But again, it depends a lot on your age. Right. Can someone switch from GKV to PKV mid-year?
Yes.
Yes, they can always do that. If I'm a freelancer, there are two ways of switching. So I'm employed, and on the 1st of April now, I leave my employment and I'm becoming a freelancer. At that moment in time, you can switch. You have 2 months to make that switch and you can switch immediately. However, if I'm GKV insured, I was a freelancer for the last year or so, I can change, but I always have a 2-month waiting period. So when I cancel my state insurance, the rule is I can change my insurer or I can cancel always to the end of the month after next. So it's always 2 months and a little bit that I have to wait before I can make the change. So
Okay.
yes, I can change at any time, but there is, unless I'm doing it in the moment where I'm changing my status from employed to freelance, I might have to wait a couple of months.
Okay. I have another one if nobody else has one. What if my freelance income varies a lot? So 1 year is 30K, the next year is 70, maybe 50. What happens then?
Okay. It's probably a little bit of an advantage of the GKV because the GKV is income-based. We'll pay, obviously, in the year I earn 70, I'll pay a lot. In the year I earn 30, I'll pay a lot less. So it's more in line with your income. Where you have to be a little bit careful is I earn 70 1 year and I earn 30 the next year. Until I have my tax return, they're still going to be charging me on the 70,000 euros. So I'm going to be earning a lot less, but I'm still going to be paying high premium. I'll get that back. Again, it takes time. They're not the quickest. I will get that back, but it hurts at first. If I'm earning 30, 40,000 euros regularly and I have spikes of 70,000 euros every now and then again, the PKV makes more sense because my bad years are enough to warrant me insuring PKV. And the good years are just a bonus because I'm not paying any more on that. That's the way you have to look at it. But it is always that calculation. How much am I paying in one and how much am I paying in the other?
Okay. We have another one here. Oh, there you go. You can see it.
My husband is working for a German company on EU Blue Card. We are from Turkey and his income is 50K plus. Too quick. I am insured under him with GKV as of now. I've just started working as a freelancer and don't know. I can't read the rest. What you have to do,
Don't know
I
how much
imagine.
I'll be earning yet.
How much
I
I'll be
pressed
earning.
enter a bit too soon.
Okay, no problem. So at the moment, you're employed under your husband in the family insurance. As soon as you start earning money yourself, okay, and it's not a little bit. As soon as your average income is over 603 euros a month, you're then 603.
Okay.
You then become socially security liable yourself,
Okay.
and then you have to pay your own premiums. Okay, so if you earn under that, you stay with your husband. If you earn over that, you have to start paying yourself. And then the calculation is how much over, and it really is this, okay, I'm earning 2,000 euros a month, I'm paying 400 euros to the state health insurance. And as of then, it's worth checking
Okay. Okay.
what makes more
So
sense.
what you said, just to get it correct, you said after I earn more than 600,
603 euros, you have to start paying yourself. But at that moment in time, your premium for the, right, As soon as you start paying into the state yourself, they assume you have an income of 14,000
Yeah.
something euros. So you're paying 201 euros straight away for your healthcare and things like
Yeah.
that. So how long have you been in Germany? Do you mind me asking?
Sorry, it has been a while, but if you are asking for a Meldung, it's also we might have the travel insurance problem as well because we arrived with a study visa. Then we
Okay.
changed to blue card. So with blue card, it has been less than 6 months. It's like 5 now. But before this, I was still working for Turkey and I was coming back and forth. So I was mainly more in Turkey than here, but I moved here officially as of 2022.
There is a chance that you could insure yourself with a compliant income insurance for the next 5 years, which would work out significantly cheaper than a full private insurance and won't be more expensive than the 201 euros plus nursing care that you're paying for the state insurance. That is a possibility for you. Okay, if you want to know more about that,
Yeah.
I would ask for some advice on that because it's quite a complicated topic, but there are possibilities for the next 5 years at least to make sure that you don't pay much.
Okay. So I should be booking a time slot, I guess.
It would make sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matthias.
Pleasure.
Go on.
Yes, of
Matthias.
course you can.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've been in Germany for 8 years, always publicly insured, but I became a freelancer, I guess, officially a year and a half ago. And now, I mean, the US, we're complicated. We have to file US taxes and they want to charge me self-employment tax. But supposedly, if I can get this form, then I'm exempt. But do I need to also be paying the Rentenversicherung or the health insurance and the Pflegeversicherung are exempting me? Because I also have the deadline of March 31st to retroactively contribute for 2025, I think, for Rentenversicherung.
Okay, that's possible. To be honest with you, no, you don't have to contribute to the Rentenversicherung, not at all. Just quickly, what kind of visa have you got? A permanent residence permit?
Permanent residency.
No, you don't have to be contributing to the pension. Yes, you do have to be. It's the laws, as far as I know, and this is where it starts to get really complicated. It's the laws in this country that you have to adhere to, and you have to prove that you are legal here, and that's enough for the US. But the US is such a complicated law system. It's scary, to be honest.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think you need to contribute to the state pension. And if you are contributing, no, if you're going to do it retroactively, you're not. It's not a sensible thing to do because it's as a freelance person, like the state pension works very much like the state healthcare. The state pension is actually in Germany. It's okay. It's not bad as long as you've got an employer paying half.
Yeah,
If
and it's
you're paying 18.6% by yourself, you don't really want to be doing that.
yeah. And I know it's not a financially wise thing to do, but if I can make €100 payment, if that's necessary to exempt me from thousands of dollars of US taxes, I just need to get this document, but I'm having a lot of trouble figuring out where to get it.
Where are you health insured?
I contacted them and they directed me to the DVKA and I contacted them. I had to make an account on some online portal. I'm not sure if it's the right form.
Okay. Right.
I don't
Here's
want
one thing I can, no. Here's one thing that I can offer you, and I'm really actually quite happy to do that because that's complicated. But I do know who knows the answer to that, and I'd hate to say something wrong. So if you would like, if you leave your email in the chat, I will ask for you tomorrow, and I will get back to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I can do. But because that really is complicated, and I don't want to say something that's not right. But I'm a great believer in you don't have to know everything yourself. But if you know somebody who knows everything, if you know what I mean, then that works just as well.
Thanks.
So I will say thank you everybody for joining us. You will get an email after the show so you can listen to it again and you can see it. You can see all the questions that was asked. You can see that everything that Matthias has said to you. If you do still have questions though, please do email us, get in touch with us. You can speak to one of our team. And yeah, it's all free of charge. Ray has just put the link in the meeting chat. And again, if you didn't get the link, it's fine. We will email it to you afterwards. Matthias, thank you.
It's a pleasure. Can I say one more thing?
Please do.
With our rebranding from MW to Stay and with the new website that we have, We have a healthcare calculator on there for private healthcare and state healthcare. If you're not sure, the premiums on there, they're not branded, but they're the exact premiums from companies that we would recommend, either basic, medium, or top care, and also the state insurance. Have a play around with that and see how the numbers work for you. So the numbers on there, even though it looks like a plaything, they're actually 100% right. So if we say we can do that, we can do that. That's the one thing. We also have a pension calculator on there, which is quite interesting as well for people who know they're going to have a permanent residency problem at the moment. So not problem at the moment, but one coming up. So I would recommend that people do that as well. It's been an interesting experience today. What I have to say is I've actually really enjoyed having people on here, so people can come and they can say something and show themselves. I think that's been really nice. It's something that I'm not used to. I've enjoyed myself. I'd like to say thank you to Sean. I'd like to say thank you to Ray and Teresa, who's hiding in the background there somewhere, for making all of this possible. And yeah, I think we should just carry on having these webinars and answering as many questions we can and trying to find as many interesting topics. If somebody has an interesting topic for another webinar, if you want to post that in the chat as well, that would be fantastic. And again, basic rule is your health is the most important thing, so you don't want to play with that for having cheap premiums and stuff like that. If you're young, healthy, you haven't got a huge family at home, and you're not 100% planning on staying in Germany, it really is a no-brainer to enjoy yourself privately.
Yeah. So if you do need us, guys, just book an appointment, use the link. Yeah, you can get some advice from one of our health advisors. Thank you, Stephen. We've got your email address, so Matthias can sort that out for you tomorrow. And yeah, we're live again in a couple of weeks, Matthias. I can't remember the date of the next one. Can you?
I think
14th. So yeah, we're live again. Have we got a topic yet? I'm putting you on the spot here.
yes, I know we've got a topic. I can't remember it. I know we have a topic.
If anybody else has a topic, like we've said, please, do get in touch. We like to cover what people want to hear. So, yeah, do get in touch with us. But take care and hopefully see you on the next webinar.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.